and they must be provable heirs. It is not just knowing this, you must be provable heirs. That's why Noble Drawley said if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality, because it's an heirship issue. If you get caught up in thinking it's money, your concept is wrong. It's an heirship issue. They want you to think it's a money issue. Although money is involved, that's peripheral. That's just peripheral. It's sort of like somebody, it's like somebody owns the farm in Wheatfield talking about, do we get the rye bread slices for the peanut butter sandwiches? Do we get the wheat ones? You know, no, it's really, that's not an exaggeration. When you get a little bit of this, they gotta divert you because it's bigger than you'll ever know. And more people know this than you'll ever know. This is why no one goes to jail. Because the United States corporation company, the U.S. democracy, is a political platform that was constructed specifically to hide this information. It's not a country, it's a political platform of impostorship. That's why they must take death oaths of secrecy. That's why nobody goes to jail. This is the reason why, in order to even begin to put brakes on this a little bit, that why the Manchurians had to step in, because it wasn't going to happen otherwise. Was not going to happen otherwise. As a matter of fact, even why negotiations are taking place right now while it's being dismantled. And so to neutralize them, they can't control them printing or what they call quantitative easing and derivatives. That's really another word for them maintaining the fraud on a network basis. It's not some individual in this department that's corrupt and an individual in that department that might be corrupt, that might have some power. The platform was designed to hide this history. The platform was designed for impostorship. So the coup d'etat of 1861 is the creation of the U.S. platform for the demons. It's called U.S. democracy. Distinguished from the United States Republic, which is the organic, legitimate political platform set up between the Muslims and the Christians as a beacon light for proper government on Earth planet and a sample or example to the rest of the civilized world. It was overthrown in 1861. Great Masonic secret. And you are the target. Do you understand? And so if the legal guys can get you start talking about colors and racism, your concept is totally wrong because it's not what's going on. And that's what their payoff is, to keep you arguing spurious, which makes you incompetent and gives them mandate. As long as the heirs are incompetent, think always, don't get emotionally involved. Think estate principle. As long as the heir of an estate demonstrates incompetence, they are in law non-descendable. No matter how old they are, they will simply be declared a minority instead of a minor. And then their leaders are told to tell them that means Afrocentricity, when it actually means political condition. Because they know they can't read anyway. You deal with most of these so-called black leaders, and they'll present minority like it's Afrocentricity. No, it really is social status. That's why they won't, give our people law and history together when they know it goes together. And then they put out these semantic terms and our people think they mean one thing and they actually mean another. Absolutely not what they think it means. And then when they confess it, they are what? Not descendable. And so it's important for those who promote these things not to teach these things. And why? Because knowing what you know so far already does what? The fiat operations of the Kabbalah of 1861 depends on your blind faith. And once the blinders are pulled off your eyes, the faith dies, and the bond therefore dies. And it has no power whatsoever except what you give it. This is codified basically where Yahshua says Satan has no power except what you give him. Well, he has all the power. He's taking all my peanut butter sandwiches. You know, and Jesus said, come on, y'all, stop. They don't have no power except what you give them. Get up, Lazarus, get up from the rich man's feet. Why? Because you have the world's largest estate. You just been misled. You want to follow after them Romans? There you go. Now you got it. You buying and selling with the mark and the number of the Roman names. Now you don't own nothing. Now you want to march, pray, and complain. Well, you can just suggest you don't hold your breath. Honor your mothers and fathers like you should have done the first time you've been married. It converts right into actually real politics. It's just that people don't understand the books because they're not presented to them in their Kabbalistic base. They're given to them in the anthropomorphic base for children. So they're looking at figures. They're going around worshiping and doing like this. The stuff don't work. And they just pass it to the next generation and have them die out. Go ahead.
I get that we are being deceived, and I get
we've been deceived and are being deceived.
Right, but what I'm trying to find out is exactly how they benefit from.
This is how they benefit. They got all your cookies. If somebody, it's like this. If somebody, you got to understand colonial operations. Sheeple magazine. That's right.
I mean, is there a payoff? Is there a payoff for them?
This is tight.
You talked about having pull over.
Oh yeah.
Is there
Take a look at this anyway while I'm talking. Get back to him. Keep that.
I got you. That's what we do.
Because it's really what it is, you know. And if there's any lessons that people can learn from the Bible, from Jesus, is the works that he did to liberate people. That work that he did. Now you already know his name is Yahushua. And then Prophet Muhammad came to complete the cycles or the works of Yahshua. They were liberators. They weren't going around teaching spookism. They were liberators. They were social reformers. And the problem with people is instead of listening to them, they start worshiping them rather than paying attention to their instructions. And it fell right back into the hands of the Romans. That's basically what's happened to us. Over and over again. And when the prophets came, they always told people, listen to my words. Just don't get caught up in worshiping me. I don't know. Only the Father knows. I only came to show you the way. Stop this stuff. All of you are gods. They would tell them that over and over again. They start worshiping the prophets, and then the Romans murder them. Then they want to talk about how great they are. And this has been the dead culture that we've been living for generations. Well, the deal of it is for your liberation, that mentality, that anthropomorphic mentality must be exposed, and you must grow up. And put your childish things away and get down with the real world and get unplugged from that false matrix that we've been plugged into for all these times. You know? And so this is the knowledge of the global world trust. Now look at this. Now this is also United States Code of Law, Title 8 corporations. That's the banking power denied. You see? See, so no corporation organized under this chapter shall possess the power of issuing bills, notes, or other evidences of debt for circulation as money, or the power of carrying on the business of receiving deposits of money. Now, already you see that these people that are operating these banks are in violation of law. Are we clear? So, as you can see, the U.S. democracy platform was set forth to negate law. It's not set forth to support law. It's set forth and constructed to negate the law and thus rob you of your estates. Are we clear? Now, for further supports, let's go into, say, Traficant's speech. And And then you can see they murdered him. As you all know, they murdered Tropicant about a year and a half ago. What's it, 2 years now?
Yeah,
2 years now?
maybe 3, going on 3.
Yeah.
2014. I think it's 2014.
Say it again?
Somebody was asking, who was it?
Oh, James Tropicant? Well, you'll see it in a minute. So, read with this, you all. This is James Tropicant's speech on the floor of the House of Representatives. And we're not going to, maybe we should go through the whole thing.
Yes, sir.
But, all right. But this will give you an understanding of someone who understands this. But this is common knowledge. This is congressional records. But you should just know this anyway. But the foundation upon which this is based is actually on Louis McFadden, who wanted to bring charges on them in 32 and 34. They poisoned him when he went to visit his daughter in New York. All right? And so, I mean, this is stuff that you're not going to get in your regular news. So I'm just informing you so that you can do research. But now we're going to read this correspondence to the House. So keep in mind, all of your politicians already know this. That means all your senators, all your congressmen, all your council people, all your mayors, all your governors, they already know this stuff. But you know they don't discuss this stuff with our people. Now keep in mind, while they're talking to you, talking about votes and everything, they already know that your vote don't count. It's just that you didn't know your vote don't count. And that's just keeping the sheeple, like Dr. Naila says on here, keeping the sheeple, keeping the sheeple busy. Keeping the sheeple busy while they rape you. Well, she's such a good artist.
Yeah. So creative.
Anyway, so this is on the floor, House Joint Resolution 192. Now this is referenced, now let's do a sequence so you'll understand. Now keep in mind when Noble Drew Ali set up the Old Canaanite Temple in 1913, it collapsed that United States corporation that was set up by the demon representatives after the coup d'etat of 61. So that United States corporation shell, they registered that one in Puerto Rico and then backed it on the backs of the descendants of the Moorish tagged as African Americans. And all the UST bonds that back their debt since the Civil War has been on your back. That's the basis of your poverty, your broken families. No matter how you work, how they're stealing your land all over the place that never gets heritable to your children, etc. And then the people have to run all different parts of the United States just to try to survive, to get a job or something, and not even knowing they're on their own land, under occupation. All right, now, so that United States lasted until about 1928. Noble Drew Ali in 1928 registered, in 25 he registered the Old Canaanite Temple under the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Moorish Temple of Science, as a civic organization. And with the support and backup of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, they were teaching government structure, etc. Drew Ali was already teaching nationality, so now they're correcting the heirship status of the people and their consciousness so that they can learn those things necessary to be better citizens, which is the highest level of civics. And they also set up a trust to protect their property. So, 1929, they assassinated him.
One thing.
Right?
One thing.
But the United States Corporation Company collapsed anyway. Here.
Jekyll Island, that was 1910.
Yeah, that was 1910 to 1913.
Right.
In other words, see, when Drew Ali established the Old Canaanite Temple, the operations, that's the official establishment. The operations were going on since 09.
All right.
Do you understand? Just like, for instance, if you're doing business here and then you do a grand opening, you've already been in business. You know, he had already been to Mecca and around. And sea merchant, he traveling the seas, that was already established. This is a countermeasure. So officially, the Old Canaanite Temple officially was established 1913. And so that's when he set up the Federal Reserve and the Inquisition operations for the exchequer. So between 13 and 16, that's when they set up the exchequer's chamber, you know, for the church, and that's called the Internal Revenue Services. All right? So that's really the Inquisition Revenue Services. So what occurred was that United States corporation that they set up in Puerto Rico collapsed because the heirs are speaking up. Now that lasted until 28. Drawley set up the civic organization in 25 and really strongly started teaching government then. They infiltrated. Woodrow Wilson, no, that's Calvin Coolidge and J. Edgar Hoover. Infiltrated, they set up the COINTELPRO operations, etc. When they actually, by law, they're supposed to back them and help them and support them. The same thing that they were supposed to do with the Freedmen's Bureau in 65.
Right.
Do you understand? So it was a countermeasure again. So they got rid of Noble Drawley in 1929. They infiltrated. 1928, he adopted a religious affidavit and also under Heard's law, so ecclesiastic law, to also preserve the people's estate, because people were coming in to the temple from church, mosque, synagogue, different walks of life, had no idea what this man was doing, but they knew something about him was right. Yeah. And so millions were coming on board. They got rid of him, but the United States Corporation Company collapsed anyway. So June the 5th, 1933, they did what is called the fake bank holiday and created another United States Corporation Company registered in France and continued to do the bonds on the descendants of the Moors, and that's really what this is all about. Are we clear? All right, so let's read. James Tropicon on the House Joint Resolution 192. United States Congressional Record, March 17, 1993. This is when he made the speech. All right, so for those researchers, volume 33, page H, 1303. This is your reference if you want to do some more research, all right? And because remember, you're going to have people amongst your own that's going to try to discourage this information, talk about this is trouble, you ain't supposed to be looking at this kind of stuff and all this stuff. You know, that's called expurgatorius. Indexus expurgatorius, indexus prohibitorum. Those are the two declarations from the Bishopric of Rome and exited through their so-called black leaders to attack you when you start getting into this knowledge. Do you understand? Mr. Speaker, Representative James Tropicon Jr., Representative of Ohio, addressing the House. Mr. Speaker, we are here now in Chapter 11. Members of Congress are official trustees presiding over the greatest reorganization of any bankrupt entity in world history, the U.S. government. We are setting forth, hopefully, a blueprint for our future. There are some who say it is a coroner's report that will lead to our demise. It is an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved. Do you understand that, brother? It's an established fact that the United States federal government has been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act, March the 9th of 1933, 48 Statute 1 Public Law, 89-719 declared by President Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent, House Joint Resolution 192, 73rd Congress in session, June the 5th, 1933, Joint Resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause, dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States and the official capacities of all United States governmental offices, officers, and departments, and is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. And he's talking about 33 under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when in fact it was actually May the 10th of 1861. It was already defunct. They created another shell. What he's talking about is this secondary shell. Are we clear? Now,
was that secondary shell the cause of the Great Depression?
No, it's think shell corporations, where people create a corporation for the purpose of transferring the wealth from another defunct corporate entity to appear legitimate when it's really not legitimate. And And the one that they created this from was also not legitimate. In other words, you're dealing with a series of shells to continue a fraud that began in 1861. This is what you must understand. And it's all about you. This is what you must understand. In other words, if you lose that consciousness, you're already lost in the false matrix. Are we clear? Because this is the basis of all, not just your poverty, but it is the basis of the world's largest economy operating on Earth planet. And it's all predicated on you. This is what you must understand. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. Which I'll show you a little bit of that in a minute. Now, the receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. So the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund are all fronts for the United States shell. That's registered in Puerto Rico. So if you don't know the history, you can't see through the shells. But those who understand this know it's Traffic is telling them. Do you understand? This is also why they set him, I think he was in jail 7 years?
Yeah.
7 years, yeah. Something like that. 9. And they killed him 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Turned his tractor around and tried to say that he was driving wrong on his farm. Of course he wasn't. Anyway, so receivers of the United States bankruptcy are the international bankers via the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. All United States offices, officials, and departments are now operating within a de facto status. And this is why you got to understand law. That's why we always teach, make sure you all get law books so you'll understand what's going on. Because most of our people that don't study jurisprudence will read past these things and not even understand it has anything to do with them. It has everything to do with them. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. And the way things operate, or not. Within a de facto status in name only under emergency war powers, so they're waging war on you. In the name of government, but they're not the government. Do you understand? They are an imposter government actually waging war on you. And you're trained by your black leaders to call it racism and prejudice when they're actually waging war on you. With the constitutional Republican form of government now dissolved, the receivers of the bankruptcy have adopted a new form of government for the United States. This new form of government is known as a democracy. Being an established socialist communist order under a new governor for America. This act was instituted and established by transferring and or placing the office of the Secretary of Treasury to that of the Governor of the International Monetary Fund. Public Law 94-564, page 8, section HR 13955 reads in part, the United States, the U.S. Secretary of Treasury receives no compensation for representing the United States. Why? Because it doesn't exist. This is what you got to understand. They've been robbing you all the time. Gold and silver was such a powerful money during the founding of the United States, now he's talking about the organic United States of America, that the founding fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be money, quote unquote, in America. Since gold and silver coinage were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks, and a claim check was issued as a money substitute. So the original certificates were the checks. Now people think that even their removal and the introduction of the private commercial paper is money, and they're 4 times removed. They don't even know what money is. Anyway, so the founding fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be money in America. That's constitutional. That's Article 1, Section 10. That's what Kennedy tried to reinstate, and that's what Lincoln countered. So death came to both of them. Are we clear? Now, they were stored in banks, and a claim check was issued as a money substitute. So the claim check was the silver and gold certificates. They were checks, and they were serialed to the gold and the silver. Are we clear? Redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes, FRNs, make no such promises and are not money. A Federal Reserve note, keep this in mind because you got to understand this whenever you're arguing anything about mortgages or anything like this. It's important for you to know, because if you call it money, you've just committed fraud and they can hold you liable. Call it what it is. Are we clear? All right. Now, gold and silver were such a powerful money during the founding of the United States of America that the founding fathers declared that only gold and silver coins can be quote-unquote money in America. Since gold and silver coins were heavy and inconvenient for a lot of transactions, they were stored in banks, and a claim check was issued as a money substitute. So anything that's not the gold or silver coin is not the money, but it's a substitute, or if it's not that claim check original, it's counterfeit. Are we clear? All right. So you must be clear in your head so that you can make rightful arguments when they come out to your properties and stuff, trying to foreclose and stuff. People traded their coupons as money. Currency, quote unquote. Currency is not money. See how you're being educated? What happens if you call it money? You're incompetent and you lose your argument. But a money substitute, redeemable currency must promise to pay a dollar equivalent in gold or silver money. Federal Reserve notes make no such promises and are not money. Are we getting redundant here? A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States government, not money. It's not even your debt, it's their debt, and it's private. A Federal Reserve note is a debt obligation of the federal United States, not money. The federal United States and the U.S. Congress were not and have never been authorized by the Constitution for the United States of America to issue currency of any kind, but only lawful money, gold and silver coin. It is essential that you comprehend the distinction between real money and paper money substitute. One cannot get rich by accumulating money substitutes. One can only get deeper in debt. We the people no longer have any quote-unquote money. Most Americans have not been paid any quote-unquote money for a very long time, perhaps not in their entire life. Now do you comprehend why you feel broke? Now do you understand why you are quote-unquote bankrupt along with the rest of the country? Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Repeat. Federal Reserve notes are unsigned checks written on a closed account. Federal Reserve notes are an inflatable paper system designed to create debt through inflation, devaluation of currency. And whenever an increase of the supply of a money substitute in the economy without a corresponding increase in the gold and silver backing, inflation occurs. Inflation is an invisible form of taxation that irresponsible governments inflict on their citizens. The Federal Reserve Bank controls the supply and movement of Federal Reserve notes, has everybody fooled. They have access to an unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes, paying only for the printing cost of what they need. Federal Reserve notes are nothing more than promissory notes for U.S. Treasury securities, T-bills, a promise to pay the debt to the Federal Reserve Bank. There's a fundamental difference between paying a debt and discharging a debt. Keep this in mind. There's a fundamental difference between paying a debt and discharging a debt. To pay a debt, you must pay with value or substance, i.e. gold, silver, barter, or commodity. With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay a debt. So when you say that you paid a debt with those Federal Reserve notes, they actually secretly declared you incompetent and a liar, and therefore you're liable. That's why people never win in so-called money arguments, even in foreclosures, because they're incompetent. So, you can only discharge a debt. You cannot pay debt with a debt currency system. You cannot service a debt with a currency that has no backing in value or substance. No contract in common law, pay attention to that, common law is valid unless it involves an exchange of good and valuable consideration. Unpayable debt transfers power and control to the sovereign power structure that has no interest in money, law, equity, or justice because they have so much ill-gotten wealth already. Their lust is for power and control. Since the inception of central banking, they have controlled the fates of nations. The Federal Reserve System is based on the canon law and the principles of sovereignty protected in the Constitution and Bill of Rights. In fact, the international bankers used a canon law trust as their model, adding stock and naming it a joint stock trust. The U.S. Congress had passed a law making it illegal for any legal person, quote unquote, to duplicate a joint stock trust. This was done in 1873. Remember, see, that's 1873, 2 years after the 1871 Act of Congress. That's where they solidified that political platform for these operations. The Federal Reserve Act was legislated post facto to 1870. Although post facto laws are strictly forbidden by the American Constitution, set at Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3. The Federal Reserve System is a sovereign power structure separate and distinct from the federal United States government. The Federal Reserve is a maritime lender. So now we're talking about sea jurisdiction, you see? And or maritime insurance underwriter to the federal United States operating exclusively under Admiralty maritime law. So therefore you must be familiar with what you're dealing with so that you can be competent. Are we clear? So I want you to take notes. The lender or underwriter bears the risks, and the maritime law compelling specific performance and paying the interest or premiums are the same.
Islam just struck me. Since we're dealing with maritime law, is that why it was necessary for them to, I guess, fabricate the lie of us coming over here in ships?
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is why they're paid black leaders to tell them that we were sardines on ships. Traveling 3.5 months in damp water with chains and stuff when no one could survive 2 weeks under those conditions. But people believed it, just like they believe Santa Claus bought them the bike that grandma bought. What's the truth?
The truth.
You know, you buy that, they know you buy anything. Anyway, so assets of the debtor, now all of a sudden you're a debtor. Assets of the debtor can also be hypothecated. Hypothecate. Keep in mind, you get very solidly grounded in that because everything operates on hypothecation. Your rights, your liberties, your property, your labor, future and present, even your children. This is what the marriage code does, claims your children under maritime law, hypothecated. That's why they can do things to people's children, force them in school, give them nanoviruses in hypodermic needles, talk about their vaccines and everything because they've already been hypothecated.
Question online. But to ask you what you mean by unsigned check. Do you mean endorsed?
Yeah, well, this is what it is. This is what it means.
Unendorsed, I guess.
Yes, this is what it means. In order to understand that, this is why we went loosely through the ancient, it's not ancient, but the old history, because if you don't know the history, that doesn't make sense to you at all. In other words, it's unsigned because it's a fraud. Because even in contract law, unsigned, it's invalid. But if you accept it, they meaning that you abandon your estate and transfer your estate and power to them administratively.
An account is already closed.
Exactly. It's a closed account. It doesn't daggone exist. But yet they're claiming you are in debt. And they're giving you your own stuff back. And they're charging you for it. And so since you have no money, they're taking labor. In other words, it's bureaucratic slavery. But they know these people can't think past two facets.
What are the words that are on the so-called signature line of a check, that when you're signing a check, say for your checking account?
Now, this is the first thing that must be understood. The checking account does not belong to you, it belongs to the bank. You're a second party to it. If you don't believe so, try to take out more than 300 at one time. And watch them treat you like a criminal. House Joint Resolution 2847, look it up. It's under the guise of employment. You don't have a checking account, they do. Every time you give them anything, it's an unsecured loan. And they are first party to it, not you.
But that's not a line. It's not a dotted line. There are actual words.
On the dotted line, you take a microscope, it's actually reading, you're endorsing from your trust, from your estate that you don't know that you have. If you take a microscope and pull up them lines, they actually are actually endorsement. There are actually words. And you're actually endorsing as an heir for them to go in and out of the Sister Q Trust, of the Global World Trust. And as a matter of fact, if you don't think so, go look up great-great-grandmother's Social Security number on any site, and you'll find that corporations are using it right to today. And all of them know that those Sister Q, that Sister Q Trust set up on the basis of the Sister QV Trust Act of 1666, 666, is the basis of the economics that are used against the Moors, who are branded Negro, black, and colored, which is the basis of the world's operations of economics from the Western Hemisphere under European colonial operations, or i.e. crusade operations that these people thought ended, that never ended. They're just told that it's racism and somebody doesn't like your color because it's plaid, and you believe them. And then they put people amongst you to convince you that that's the political foundation, and it's actually birthright theft. It's mine, good brother.
That number you gave.
No, got it.
House Joint Resolution. What was that number you just, House Joint Resolution? I think you said
192, 73rd Congress in session, June 3rd.
2847.
Yeah, those are, pardon me, that's the public law. And when you research them, that's where you'll find that the United States Corporation Company is actually supposed to discharge the debt, not you. Because it's not your debt. But they tag you. This is what they do. They pay so-called black leaders to convince you under the 14th Amendment corporate transfer of personage of that corporation to be U.S. citizens and thus a beneficiary of the stock. And because it's a joint stock trust and you're declared incompetent, it defaults to them and they escheat your estate and therefore have access to the resource and you don't, although you declared the beneficiary. But in actuality, they're supposed to discharge for the heir. And so every time you buy or sell or move with the mark or the number of that name, they discharge in your name. That's why they always want you to sign things, because they can get compensated double. Mm-hmm. Because when they send you a so-called bill, it's really not a bill. It's really a check, and it's a statement on the account, and it is cashable. And so the court, when you, like you pay, you think you pay an electric bill? No, the greenbacks are taken as a donation. It's called de-donus. Same thing when you think you're making mortgage payments. It's a donation. They accept the donation, then they sign for you, or you get your signature anywhere, they lift it and put it on another document and go into the Sister Q Trust, and then they take the QSIC number, they remove the dashes because then it becomes credit. and then they use your credit, and then they create bonds behind it and put them right back on the stock market, and then they fractionalize them again, and that's the basis of their wealth, is the use of your estate that you don't know you have. Go ahead.
Taj, last year, a couple of brothers went down 6th and Market, got in the federal building, and there was a line that these Europeans are bringing those checks back for cash. And when they seen them in the line, they said, "Oh, you can't come in here."
Mm-hmm. And they start blocking them.
Yeah, they start blocking.
Oh, I know. Because they're on us. This is what you must understand.
Wow.
The Europeans are colonists.
Yeah.
No matter how many generations. But you got to understand the motive. Now, people who wouldn't understand this would start talking racism and prejudice. It's not that. They don't have, the state is not theirs, it's yours. If the Asiatics do it, the system collapses. Because it would indicate competence. They don't want that on the record. Why do you think they put out, they got operatives that's all around here that look like me and you. And they're heightening up their attack on us dispensing this information because it's causing them T-bonds to collapse. See, you can't beat the beast. He's a death machine. You got to stop feeding him. You know, and this is why do you think, when you understand this history, when you really understand this history, use your intelligence, right? Why is it, for anybody, most of you all are young, but those of you a little older, think the last 35, 40 years, they were doing HMOs, then they do site drafts, then they did self-created instruments to the Department of Transportation, then they did UCCs, then they did UCC 1 and 3 and 9 financial statements. Now they're trying to authenticate the birth certificate. Every last one of those operations are promises for access to the global world trust that was set up after the Red House fell. Everybody trying to get their hands into this bottomless pit of financial wealth that belonged to the Moors. Think in your mind, how does governments operate? Any clerk in any office, whether municipal, city, borough, state, or federal. Dr. Naila, you work around people in government. Is any clerk in any office allowed by law to release from their office any original documents to anyone?
Not to my knowledge.
By law, they can't. They don't have the authority. And they can't anyway because they're all bonded. They're on the stock market. It's called human capital. It's backing all their bonds. They will give you certified copies for an application and a fee, conditionally. They ain't giving you no original, nothing. Now, consider this. In law, and you all know law. If I'm incorrect, you tell me. Because I'm always studying, I'm ready to learn. To have holder in due course status in law, right of claim. The one claiming to be holder in due course must have in his or her possession the original instrument, whether it's a mortgage, deed, instrument, certificate, bond, or stock. No copy, though verified as copy, has valid argument in what you would call controversial argument of holder in due course. Holder in due course must have the original instrument, which is the reason why the Moorish thing with all these mortgages, with people who understand this history and this knowledge, why those bankers were declared fraud, because they are not the holders in due course. And they've been foreclosing on people's houses, and people who understand this challenge them to produce the original mortgage connected to its promissory note by law, which must have never been separated. At any time, if separated, the argument, the claim is dead. Keep that in mind. If you ever get in a foreclosure argument, don't start talking about no payments because you ain't made no damn payments.
Right.
They're gifts. They're called donors. And they already foreclosed on you 72 hours after you did the transaction anyway. And they created another, a third party, third party holder. Yes. And then you still so-called paying them, they're just accepting the gift. Because what they're doing is transferring your name in and out of the Sister Q Trust. That's why they don't want you. That's why, like, you take the average person, like, say, for instance, if the average person saw a building and they had what they're calling cash to go buy a building, right? Most of them people would reject it. They don't want that cash. They want you to do a mortgage. You understand what I'm saying to you? And when you pay it off either. Go ahead.
Quick question is, what kind of argument would the bank throw at you when you try to,
They would start talking money and payment and get you to talk money and payment. As soon as you do, they already got you in the trap. This is why I started with the reversion to tell you how you should be talking, which we'll go back to this again. Concept. That's why we're going over this, so you can understand concept. Are we clear? And good question. But keep in mind, why are we talking this? Because your concept of what you're dealing with must be cleared up. Do you understand? All right, so assets of the debtor, this is an assumption, isn't it? Now, if you accept that, also, if you say you're a U.S. citizen, you're a debtor. All right. Debtor can also be hypothecated to pledge something as a security without taking possession of it. This is why they create those instruments. And this is why if you don't have an estate or make a claim of estate on your stuff publicly, it's already hypothecated. And the only way you can start interrupting with their claim is that you make public claim. And so if you don't have a trust and you don't make a public declaration of your right of estate, it's already assumed hypothecated. And so when you walk into any one of them venues, you have no standing from the beginning. And you'll be thinking, I paid this made 5 payments last week. In your mind. And they'll talk to you in that frame, knowing that you don't know what the swell's going on, and they'll run you through all this thing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, run out all your energy, and then take your stuff anyway. Because they know that you don't understand it's already been hypothecated.
I already took it.
Do you understand what I'm saying to you? That's what a hypothecation is. The Federal Reserve Act stipulated the interest on the debt was to be paid in gold. And this way they could steal your actual finance in the same process with the fraud instruments. Now, there was no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act for ever paying the principal. Now, pay attention to this very close and know what you're leading when you're reading this. Prior to 1913, I'm repeating, put timelines in your head. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear allodial title to property. Raise your hand, everybody know what allodial title is. I know y'all heard about mortgages and debts and all that stuff with credit. Now notice how few hands went up in this room. Now y'all conscious. So you can see how the masses don't even know what they're dealing with. And we're talking about people who, in the name of education, got certificates and stuff on the wall, wallpapered all across here. So if y'all don't know and y'all conscious in a venue like this, what chance does the average person out there with a John D. Rockefeller education? And so what chance do the children have? Now they're marching all over the place because everything's wrong. And even when they're arguing, their argument is wrong. They don't even know their argument is wrong. Do you understand? Meaning well don't know what this is what they're talking about. And some of this information is what Malcolm found out too. So you can understand the disappointment he was going through. Because he had an admiration for a lot of people that didn't necessarily have his interest in art either. And so you can understand that even though he had to relearn a lot, you can also understand when that French Muslim schooled him, said, come over here with that white and black stuff. That's slave language. To you all, Maghrib is Wednesday Salat. To the rest of the world, Maghrib is North America, Morocco, the most extreme West. What time you didn't understand just because you made the Hajj? You didn't come home, you left home. So you can understand why Malcolm stood up there bold and resolved, knowing there was nowhere to go. And you understand the password that they used for the Kabbalists. It said, get your hand out of our pocket. And then assassinated him. And it wasn't no devil either. Anyway, let's continue. So prior to 1913, pay attention to this. Prior to 1913, most Americans owned clear, allodial title to property, free and clear of any liens or mortgages, until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. And so when these people got mortgages and deeds, they don't know their sharecropping. Are we clear? Even looking at that, now do you understand why Drew Ali set up the old Canaanite temple for the restoration of the estate to the rightful heirs? Many people go to them temples, don't even know this. They know that he did it, but don't know the motive. Because they have not studied. Do you understand? All property within the federal United States to the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. So you can see that they're really what? Board of Governors and thus directors and trustees for the private corporation. In which the trustees, stockholders, so they're the stockholders of you, held legal title. The U.S. citizen, tenant, franchisee was registered as a beneficiary of the trust. Keep in mind, it's a double stock trust. Via his or her birth certificate in 1933. So now, the bonds that they put on our backs since Woodrow Wilson, Drew Ali crashed that in the United States, so now they're using the birth certificates. Are we clear? 1933, the Federal United States hypothecated all of the present and future properties, assets, and labor of their quote-unquote subjects, the 14th Amendment U.S. citizen to the Federal Reserve System. Now you understand why Drew Ali said in the Divine Warning, the 14th and 15th Amendment is not necessary for the salvation of my people and citizens. He said, the have not been told. If I told you everything, you go back to sleep. He said, go back to that state of mind of your ancient mothers and fathers. Study yourselves. And you knew you'd find this out. In return, the Federal Reserve System agreed to extend the Federal United States Corporation all the credit money substitute, quote unquote, it needed. Like any other debtor, the Federal United States government had to assign collateral and security to their creditors as a condition of the loan. Since the Federal United States didn't have any assets, they assigned the private property of their economic slaves, the U.S. citizens, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. They also pledged the unincorporated federal territories, national parks, forests, birth certificates, and nonprofit organizations as collateral against the federal debt. All has already been transferred as a payment to the international bankers. Unwittingly, America has returned to its pre-American Revolution feudal roots, whereby all land is held by a sovereign and the common people had no rights to hold allodial title to property. Once again, we the people are the tenants and sharecroppers renting our own property from a sovereign in the guise of the Federal Reserve Bank. We the people have exchanged one master for another. And this has been going on for over 80 years. That's at the time that he wrote this. That he made this speech. without the informed knowledge of the American people, without a voice protesting loud enough. Now it's easy to grasp why America is fundamentally bankrupt. Why don't more people own their properties outright? Why are 90% of Americans mortgaged to the hilt and have little or no assets after all debts and liabilities have been paid? Why does it feel like you are working harder and harder and getting less and less? We are reaping what has been sown, and the results of our harvest is a painful bankruptcy and a foreclosure on American property, precious liberties, and a way of life. Few of our elected representatives in Washington, D.C. have dared to tell the truth. The federal United States is bankrupt. Our children will inherit this unpayable debt and the tyranny to enforce paying it. America has become completely bankrupt in world leadership, financial credit, and its reputation for courage, vision, and human rights. This is an undeclared economic war, bankruptcy, and economic slavery of the most corrupt order. Wake up, America, take back your country. And in other ways, wake up, Moors, and declare your nationality. Because the United States is not a country, it's a private corporation. So if you don't know the distinction, now you understand the reversionary statement that we read, that we started off with? So, if you don't understand the history, logically, your argument when you have any problem would be incorrect, although you would mean well, because you would be arguing from the miseducation that was afforded you in school, and backed up by your so-called leadership, who would be, who have been and are logically compensated to keep you in the mystery system. And so we're going to go back to this again. We're going to go back to this again and then be sure that you comprehend what all this is. And so again, I, the living man and rightful heir, am not lost at sea. I firmly declare my right of reversion of estate, and I make no claim with respect to the title and misrepresented name, man of straw, and non-begeer being a title. Of course, you already know that's the 14th Amendment conversion. And the spurious creations of the foreign de facto United States corporation operators, actors, and owners. And I surrender and assign any and all reversionary interest to the foreign United States and its subsidiaries for full acquittance, discharge, settlement, and closure of my reliance Title 12 United States Code 95A, Part 2, and I assume no liabilities or debts, however contrived, among its associates, and I do not consent to stand as, quote-unquote, sureties. Important for you to understand that. I do not consent to stand as surety for the foreign United States U.S. corporation, entity owners, directors, or administrators, nor for its subsidiaries or associates at any point or moment in time. Now, and so, when you deal with them, one of the main things you want to get across to them is that you do not consent to stand as surety. This neutralizes the assumption of hypothecation that's already operable. Are we clear? And the only way that you lose power to make that claim if you claim to be Negro, black, and colored, which would bring you under the Christian black codes, and therefore you have no standing, i.e. the Dred Scott issue. Same thing with Dred Scott. Same principle. So because the treaty and the Constitution are essentially national wills, and if you're not a party to it, you have no claim of right in it. Are we clear? This is where a lot of Europeans who perfected a lot of these so-called sovereign process powers find themselves against the wall when the magistrates tell them you can't use that treaty and Constitution as a defense. You're not a party to it. Once they agreed to be white people, they lost their birthright too. You got to really understand the politics to understand this. See, so your mind, you don't get caught up in colors because you know it has nothing to do with color. It has to do with descendability and legal status and estate. Exactly what they don't want you to be thinking about. Are we clear? Go ahead, good brother.
Quick question is, I believe that Mr. Barack Obama said everybody needs to declare their nationality. Will the European be evicted from this land?
Say it again?
Will the European be evicted from this land?
Not necessarily, not all of them. Drew Ali says some of them are going to leave. He says they're over 3,000 miles from home. They're going to take on a lot of water. And he says, but a lot of them will be kept because they're good farmers. and it's no different than when they trained Castro in Texas, when they had to get rid of Batista, because the Christian ministers here and the politicians, have been maintaining those little whorehouses of them 12 and 13-year-old girls for so many years on Cuba, and they started murdering some of the women who were trying to protect their daughters, and they got kind of ugly. And so to try to keep that information from coming out into the world, they sat down, got their point man, whose name was Batista. They trained Castro in Texas to mitigate the thing and to get the natives to be, calm, etc. But as soon as Castro got in, he nationalized Cuba and told them to take their asses home. That's why they don't like Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
So you got to know the real history, not what they tell you.
Right.
Do you understand? Because they're really Satanists. They eat children. Not only do they torture and sacrifice them, they eat them. So, and this is known to everybody. Anybody in politics knows this, although that's an ugly situation, as far as the masses are concerned, but politicians all know that. It's always been that way. And so, like when people talk about the ugly things that they do, they always act surprised. The only people that act surprised are people who really don't know the history. And others who are acting surprised are only faking. Oh, I'm so surprised. They knew this stuff all the time. You know what I mean? So now, when Chavez, I know a couple of you remember a few years back when Chavez spoke before the United Nations, and he stood on a podium and he said, "I smell sulfur." Of course, you already know they killed him a couple of years later, but he nationalized Venezuela. You see? And the same thing's going on in Argentina now, and so a lot of your true American states are nationalizing. And keep in mind, Drew Ali nationalized us in 1913. We just seem to be slow to the rest of the world. It's almost like we got brakes on it. You know what I mean? Because we don't understand those principles. Even, after Germany couldn't have a standing army after the Treaty of Versailles, Hitler nationalized Germany. So he said, everybody, get off my mother's breast, go home on your own mother's breast. Then everybody who was faking religion as nationality was caught. Knows all the frauds were caught. That's called nationalization. Nationalization comes from nativity. It comes from the principle of honoring your mothers and your fathers, that your days may be longer upon the earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. Honor not your mothers and fathers, you will serve another man. Particularly if you're transacting business in another man's name. What makes you think you have right of inheritance when you dishonor your mothers and fathers? Therefore, you cannot trump the common law, because only the common law can trump the canon law, upon which the straw man transference and misrepresentation of the 14th Amendment was created in the canon law in the first place. That's why Raleigh adopted religious affidavit in 1928 to neutralize the operations of the Pope. Because our people logically didn't understand what religion really is anyway. They think religion is worshiping. Religion is cosmogony and a knowledge of how the universe works and your relationship to the divine order of things with a knowledge of divine law, correspondence, duality, compensation, etc., vibration, gender, etc. Those are universal principles of cosmogony, which is religion. It's called Hermetic law. Universally. They don't teach people religion, they give them dogmata. And so the people are declared incompetent, and the priesthood themselves are really raping the people. That's the argument that Yahshua had with those who were doctoring up the law. Yahshua wasn't arguing with no devil, he was arguing with the priesthood. Doctoring up the law, even at the age of 12. And they say the devil came, he was doing goody stuff, and then the devil came along and took all our peanut butter sandwiches and killed Jesus and stuff. No, they didn't, because the priesthood did it. Priesthood and the Romans in partnership. And I'm saying secret societies exist to this very day. And the mystery devil gets blamed for what the priesthood did then and is doing now. And that's the truth. And they got a 501c3 kickback agreement. And these people think it's 10% tied to Jesusness. And it's really a skull and bones agreement. And that's called and now some people are figuring out, they say, well, we ain't doing that no more for some of them. Now we got 501c4s. Yeah, right. Still dealing with the same demons. Selling themselves out and selling people out. But the deal is, oh, go ahead.
Question is, how do we proceed with civil orders? What steps should we take to have...
The civil order set by the Pope?
Well, let me finish. What steps should we take to have the National Guard at our temples and domiciles to service us and to be our arms that we have a right to? Let me see. That we have a right to bear.
All right. Now, the statement kind of refers to the obligation of the sheiks, the grand sheiks, the moderator, and chairman set forth in the Moorish Holy Temple of Science. And the first act is that they are put in power to make law and to enforce law as long as they live according to what? The principles. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I.e., have they been enforcing the law according to their charters?
No.
Did Durali do a caveat emptor?
Yes.
Did Durali do additional constitutional bylaws?
Yes.
Did he tell the Queen of England to enforce that constitution and treaty? Yes, he did.
Yes.
Did Obama expose, when he went to Egypt, that the American Constitution comes from Muslim law? Yes, he did. Did Michelle go to the Red House?
Yes.
Did she wear a red dress?
Yes.
Did they show the true American flag?
Yes.
Did President Obama show a picture of Noble Durali to make it clear who he is? Rahm Emanuel, the Jew, signed the proclamation telling the history and the estate of the Moors and what Noble Durali did?
Yes.
Did they sign the rights of indigenous people before these people declare their nationality?
Yes.
Yes.
That's your answer.
Okay.
Because you got to be an heir before you can talk about anything. In other words, like this. When Germany was going down to the tubes, look past what they're telling you about Hitler in the school books. Look at the principle of saving a nation. Hitler nationalized Germany because Germany could not have a standing army after the Treaty of Versailles. There were people in Germany that were squandering and raping the economy, having no allegiance whatsoever. So the universal political act of saving a nation is called nationalization all over planet Earth, always has been that. Hitler nationalized Germany, gave all people that had no allegiance an opportunity to go. Frog feet, kites,
Get out.
balloons, rafts, and boats and ships to go home to their mother. So is it true that he gave no one a chance to leave to go home to their mother? Oh, so it's not exactly like they said it did. And then some people were hiding, still corrupting their economies and crushing Germany's economy. So he invited them to a barbecue party. He was waging war on Germany. The obligation of the obligation of the family is to save the mother. Nation and mother are equals in law. Motherland, mother flag, mother nature, mother law, mother inheritance. And when your mother's dying or sick, you pull all aliens off her breast until she is nurtured back to health. That's universal law. It's called nationalization when it's converted into the political principles of civilization on Earth planet that's called Gaia. And I think that should answer a lot of questions. Might be harsh, but when you got to save your mom, somebody tearing up your house, you say, you only got to go home and just gotta leave your house. The party's over. And somebody hides behind the bathtub upstairs, you already know your enemy. Now it gets serious. So you just put some hot water in the tub. You understand? All bets are off then.
So when they say, when she's asking the question, National Guard, is she talking about a Moorish National Guard or a?
No, this is what you're really talking about. What you're talking about is making the distinction between people who are really constitutionalists and people who are not, because that's what must be enforced. That's what protects the people. It's called constitutional officers. Now you got to make distinctions of who is really loyal or who's the traitors. So now you must make the distinction between what? Cabal members, which are traitors. Those are all the members of the U.S. democracy and their contractors, and the organic Constitution and treaty enforcers, which have been silent. So therefore, the Queen of England and the members of the United States Corporation Company by treaty and Constitution owe us, don't they? And they have been in breach, have they not? Is this not what Pope Francis is trying to remedy now with the civil orders? That's why I asked what the reference to the question was, because the civil orders is being addressed by the owner of the United States Corporation Company now. And correlating back to this, let's go back and look at the owner of the United States Corporation Company and the corporate entities. And keep this in mind, this is not unknown stuff to you all. But again, some of the redundancy is for clarification to you. Now keep in mind these two things we're going to do. And this is redundant, but this is for your concept clearance. So that those who don't understand this don't get all sensitive and understand, and don't get sensitive, don't be calling Pastor Pigfoot a vampire and stuff. Because that's my cousin. Yeah, because he's a person. This is the United States Congressional Records. Article 3. Read this together, y'all. Convinced that the principles of religion contribute most powerfully to keep nations in the state of passive obedience which they owe to their princes. The high contracting parties declare it to be their intention to sustain in their respective states those measures which the clergy may adopt with the aim of ameliorating their own interests, intimately connected with the preservation of the authority of the princes, and the contracting powers join in offering their thanks to the Pope for what he has already done for them, and solicit his constant cooperation in their views of submitting the nations. So we can see by the record they're submitting the nations to the Pope of Rome, not to Jesus. Pope, P-O-P, he does not spell J-E-S-U-S. And it's congressional record for so people who deny that this, so you can see the clergy are working for their own interest. Now you understand why they have no conscience and they're asking for $60 million planes with Jesus' ad. So let's go to the Pope's letter to Obama. Now keep in mind all members, all corporation operators are members of the Roman Curia. Are we clear? Now we're going to go through with the commentary before we go into the Pope's letter and give you a background, but it's incomplete, but you understand this, understanding the history, all right, that I gave you, including the Abraham Lincoln administration and the coup d'etat. The original and de jure Constitution and government for the United States of America at North America, having a republican form of government set forth and established at Article 4, Section 4, stands as the supreme law of the land. That's the supreme law of the land. So if that's the supreme law of the land, what do you need a lawyer for? Because the Constitution is the national will. Why is no one enforcing it? Because they don't want you to go there. 7 articles, 10 Bill of Rights, and they got you arguing with the Barrister Association that's not even supposed to be holding office. See why you keep getting screwed? This also is an answer to that question. So, the organic constitution was altered by acts of misprision. That's violations against the sovereigns or against the people, i.e. treason, all clear. And was secretly overthrown and converted into a foreign, privately owned, and deemed for-profit corporation in the year 1871. See Act of Congress 1871. All right? So we won't go through all this because I don't think we have the time. So we're going to go into the body of the letter. So as you can see, also they are members of the Roman Curia. See that, y'all? So you need to be familiar with these things in order to understand what you're looking at. So Obama is the Pope's employee. You must understand that because he's simply the praetor of the corporate entity. Are we clear? So Pope Francis sends Obama a powerful letter via attorney on July the 4th, 2014. Also the other correspondence,
June 10th,
June the 10th,
2014.
2014.
July 4th, 2014.
Say it again?
And July 4th, 2014.
July the 4th. All right.
There's 2.
So it's more than that, but
Yeah.
3 of them pertain exclusively to us. So
Yes. Now, civil orders, and this relates to part of the question. Civil orders, and this is when, this is for all of you to understand that all of your local leader guys, congressmen, mayors, council people, politicians, senators and congressmen, even the police know this. So just because they're not talking, don't think they don't know this. So as you can see, the Pope is addressing all of them in the first paragraph so that you don't let any one of them talk to you like they don't know what this is about. Are we clear? Issued to all members of the domestic police forces. So that means when you meet these police on the street and they're giving you tickets and everything, they already know that they're violating you. Are we clear? U.S. Marshal Service, the Provost Marshal, members of the American Bar Association, and the American Armed Forces. So that means all the Marines, Army, Navy, club members, and all the National Guard, FARC, carriers, and everything else. These organic American states of the Union, known as the United States of America, major, pay attention to the different formations of writing because he's also telling you about the shell systems that we mentioned earlier. Are we clear? These organic American states of the Union, known as the United States of America, major, exercising plenary civil power upon the land. Talking land jurisdiction, you must understand these things. Hereby appoint General Carter F. Ham to lead and command the Grand Army of the Republic and its successors under the guidance of the Joint Chiefs of Staff with their full support. Successors mean any successive corporate entities, etc., that inherit the contracts, the enumerated power contracts, and subcontractors, etc. Are we clear? As well as your several states and the same in order. Are we clear? Including all ordinaries. Are we clear? All right. Should it become necessary to suppress commercial mercenary forces? So these people are actually commercial mercenaries. They're not officers of the legitimate government. They're commercial mercenaries. Now you understand why the policemen act the way they act on the streets? You think they're law officers, they're mercenaries. You need to understand what's operating here.
You mean that Blackboard?
Like seriously. And the green water too. And the one with the leeches in it too. Should it become necessary to suppress commercial mercenary forces operating under the guise of being federal government agencies, including but not limited to the Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Emergency Management Administration, the Internal Revenue Service, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, etc. General Ham shall assume immediate command and control of all armed forces and services owed to the United States of America, major. stationed in North America. Notice how it's separated from the land? And shall join them under his command as the Grand Army of the Republic. All forces of air, land, and sea are to be employed. Any cost or loss suffered as a result of deployment of the Grand Army of the Republic shall be charged as stipulated prior. All efforts, all efforts shall be made by the Grand Army of the Republic to spare life and property while undertaking any action whatsoever within the states of the Union, without exception. The Grand Army of the Republic is uniquely enabled by these orders to operate on the land of the 50 organic states for the purpose of securing the lives and property of the American states and American state citizens. The Grand Army of the Republic is not a foreign army and is composed primarily of American state citizens. If required to take field position, the local commanders shall make every effort to communicate the basis of their authority and the reasons for their presence on American state soil. To ensure a prompt cessation of hostilities and a widespread understanding of the usurpations and acts of fraud which have led to any conflict, all parties must be brought to understand the nature of the federal government, the limitations of its authority, and their own obligation to act in favor of the organic states of the Union. The Grand Army of the Republic shall continue to operate under General Order 100, known as the Lieber Code, extant from the pen of the last Republic President, Abraham Lincoln. As you see, he was the last lawful president. No orders, executive or otherwise, issued by Barack H. Obama pretending authority on the land of the American states while operating as quote-unquote President of the United States Corporation, nor as quote-unquote President of the United States of America minor, are owed any performance by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Ham, or any ordinary capital letter. All plainly stated grants of contractual authority evident in the Constitution for the United States of America remain in place subject to good faith performance of the accompanying obligations and treaties. Therefore, you must be aware of the treaty and the Constitution, and that they're as one document. Now you understand why Drawley told you, help me in my great missionary work to enforce our Constitution for the United States of America. He's giving you the real history. Mr. Obama is the president of a governmental services corporation. Are we clear? You didn't believe, no Drawley, so now the Pope who owns the corporation is telling you. Mr. Obama is the president of a governmental services corporation under contract to provide stipulated services to the organic states. See the distinction? And is on his payroll, on their payroll. He otherwise acts as a what? A foreign dignitary representing the United States of America minor. What's he talking about? The United States Corporation registered in Puerto Rico and in France. That was bankrupted by Lincoln in 1860. That's why the coup d'etat of 1861. So if you don't know the history, you don't know what you're reading. So when you talk about charge and discharge and accept for value, you don't know this history and you ain't an heir thinking that you can just be credited because I ain't the dad, I'm sick of being credited. It don't work like that. It's not that simple. It sounds simple, ain't it? Anyway, Mr. Obama is the president of a governmental services corporation under contract to provide stipulated services to the organic states and is on their payroll. He otherwise acts as a foreign dignitary representing the United States of America minor. In neither of these capacities is he allowed any granted authority to impose upon American state citizens, endanger American state property, or command mercenary forces on American state soil, however veiled as federal civilian service agencies. We require the Joint Chiefs of Staff and General Ham to commence measures to disarm federal civilian agency personnel and to seize control of the vast stockpiles of arms which have been improperly amassed by the Department of Homeland Security FEMA, and other agencies employed by the United States. Again, that answers the question. The only federal agency allowed free egress on the land of the American states is the U.S. Marshal Service. And then only when their personnel are engaged in their duty to protect the U.S. mail and sworn to act as constitutional officers. You must know these distinctions. All other federal agency personnel are limited to unarmed service until further notice. So what they doing, come towards you with guns, talking about your tail lights out and stuff.
Problem.
They're violating international law and the Pope, which they've been doing all the time anyway. So now the Pope's calling them to the table. But what they have is rebellion in the ranks. Now do you understand why the Manchurians and everybody's on their butts? We direct the Joint Chiefs of Staff to communicate these first two general civil orders directly to Mr. Obama, the members of the U.S. Congress, the administrators of all federal agencies, and the members of the Supreme Court, and those acting as governors. Are they governors?
No.
They're acting as governors to compel their rapid understanding and cooperation. Any expense or damage incurred by these organic states or any American state citizen as a result of actions undertaken by any federal agency personnel acting as armed mercenaries on American state soil will be understood as a result of violent crimes committed against the peaceful inhabitants of the land, and will incur immediate judgment liquidating the assets of the International Monetary Fund and the Federal Reserve, uppercase and lowercase, in payment of the stipulated reparations. So if you talk about reparations, you're talking about nations. You talk about clubs. Such crimes shall also be considered contract default, increasing the public debt subject to bounty. Any and all corporate officers of the United States, all caps, or any successor organizations, that means successor corporate entities in these shells that they've been creating over and over and over again, inheriting federal service contracts who support, condone, or promote such crimes against the American states or against American state citizens shall be subject to arrest and prosecution for commercial and violent crimes. All federal officers, all foreign officials operating as elected or appointed officials of the United States of America, minor, who support, condone, or promote such crimes against the American states or against American state citizens shall be subject to arrest, confiscation of their assets, and deportation to Puerto Rico, Guam, or such other states, quote unquote, as may be willing to receive them. Such foreign officials include, now this is very important for your concepts to be here so you can understand the reversion of the statement. Such, quote unquote, foreign officials include members of the American and the British Bar Associations who are licensed to act as privateers against the interest of the American states and the American state citizens from 1845 to 2013 in flagrant breach of trust. All such licenses are now extinguished. Members of the bar associations are required to cease and desist assaults against the American states and American state citizens and shall be subject to arrest, confiscation, and deportation otherwise. In so much as corporate officers operating the United States of America Incorporated and the United States have contrived under conditions of fraud and semantic deceit to revenue the estates of the American states and the living American state citizens to the foreign jurisdiction of the United States of America minor. They are found guilty of capital crimes, including acts of fraud and treason committed between 1933 and 1945, and are condemned posthumously. In so much as elected officials operating the United States of America minor have similarly committed war crimes against the American states and their peaceful inhabitants during the same time period, they stand condemned posthumously. No enforcement upon any American state or American state citizen is owed as a result of any act of any Congress, quote unquote, operating as the sovereign government of the United States of America minor, nor as the board of directors or board of trustees of any incorporated entity whatsoever. All those estates small case and estates uppercase erroneously believed to represent the American states and the American state citizens, and which were conveyed by fraud and legal deceit to the United States of America minor, and more recently to the city-state of the United Nations, are revenued without exception to the geographically defined American states and the American state citizens, where they shall remain in perpetuity as assets belonging to the rightful and lawful beneficiaries. Distinctions must be made, mustn't they?
Yes.
All those estates erroneously believed to represent the American states, so that leaves nothing out, doesn't it?
Right.
So all the straws that they created, no matter how they created them, you must make the distinction, mustn't you? So you better know yourself and you better be yourself. All legal fiction entities, however structured and named after the American states, excuse me, all legal fiction entities, and take this paragraph into consideration for all persons, all people at any given time that keep trying to sell sovereignty packages of any type and claim that you can buy the sovereignty and you can get your hands in this Cusick account by giving them so much fiat, and they'll send you through some process of claiming the birth certificate, authenticating this instrument or that instrument. This is the Pope who owns them all. This is what he has to say concerning those matters. All legal fiction entities, however structured, does that leave anything out?
Nope.
No. However structured and named after the American states, so that covers all straws transmitting utilities, after the American states and American state citizens are returned to them and their control, free and clear of any debt, promise, encumbrance, or obligation alleged against them as a result of false claims made, quote unquote, in their behalf by officers of the United States of America Incorporated and the United States Incorporated uppercase, or by any foreign officials operating in the United States of America minor, or the United Nations city-state falsely claiming to, quote unquote, represent them or have jurisdiction over them. We note that the current circumstance is in part the result of criminal acts engaged in 150 years ago, which resulted in the commercial enslavement of African Americans, who were summarily claimed as chattels backing U.S. government debt in wake of the Civil War. Despite every act of abolition and declaration of prohibition against both peonage and slavery, it has been the policy of the U.S. government to enslave its citizens and to operate as a rogue estate among the nations of the world. Instead of freeing African Americans, the sum total result of the Civil War was to vastly expand public sector ownership of slaves, giving rise to the outrageous and improper claims that have been made against the American states and the American state citizens that we are dealing with today. It is uniquely fitting that the Grand Army of the Republic is recalled to settle the circumstance in favor of the people. Attachments: Civil Orders, Anna Maria Wilhelmina, Hanna Sophia Ritzinger von Ritzenstein von Letlow Verbeck, private attorney, in service to His Holiness Pope Francis. Documents related. The United States isn't a country, it's a corporation. The hidden Vatican Crown Empire. Now, does it say white American sovereign or Indians?
Nope.
Who's the real true American state citizens?
We are. The
So-called
Moors.
African Americans, so really the Moorish Americans, who were really overthrown after the fall of the Red House, and the whole bond system has been based on your back since the Civil War, and this is what all your so-called black leaders new all the time. And they've been promoting the so-called black diaspora, that you were brought from someplace else and you've been home all the time. Dorothy, you just bumped your head. No, that's what the Wizard of Oz is. It's telling you, it's telling you the truth. This is also the answer to that question. So the Pope owns the United States Corporation Company, and you can see he's having problems fixing this. But they got heat under their butts right now with the Manchurians and other nation states dumping them UST bonds. They're starving them. The deal of it is they're what? Killing the bonds. And so they can't survive because that's been the source of their capacity from 55 Water Street to the world government selling the bonds that they put on the Moorish Americans, that they tagged as African Americans, to back their debt since the Civil War. You're not suffering prejudice, you're suffering birthright theft. And you're the heirs to the world's largest estate. Are we clear, y'all?
Islam.
Go ahead, brother.
My question is, I noticed that you have a lot of these gun shows. This is like?
Yeah, they're getting ready because they know what's coming.
They know what's coming.
They know what's coming. Well, it's self-evident. Now the deal of it is, the Manchurians, they put out approximately 6.5 million, it's closer to 7, but 6.5 million perfected assassins out of a pool of about 20 million to counteract European colonial operations on Gaia, that's Earth planet, with the intent of restoring civility to the Earth planet. So that's what's going on right now. China, with the help of Russia, and many other Asiatic nations are now beginning to unite to dump the UST bonds, and the U.S. Corporation Company fails to and refuses to stop creating these fraud instruments and putting them on the world, and then claiming that we own the debt so they could use that global world trust to go in and out with the Sister Q Trust and the CETUS Trust system with their CUSIC number that's based by Franklin Delano Roosevelt with the birth bonds, etc., on the Social Security number to claim that we are U.S. citizens and that we agreed to accept the debt when we're actually the true beneficiaries, when we actually had nothing to do with any of that stuff. And this is another reason why they put out agents to get these people to think that if they authenticate the birth certificate, that they'll have access to the account. But when they authenticate the birth certificate, that means the heirs is authenticating the fraud that is used to steal the birthright, which lets them off the hook. Now you have no future suit for reparations. It's a trick. And so the Pope is telling you that there is no debt, there is no encumbrance, there is no lien that is returned to you. The Inquisition is over. Finally. Well, at least that's what he's saying. That's what he's telling you. See, because the whole thing of world politics that's been going on in the modern world is that the world was put to sleep into thinking that the Crusades had ended, when in fact it went underground. The U.S. democracy was the political platform through the military complex to continue the Spanish Inquisition and the Christian Crusades under the guise of pretending to be a nation. And that's what you see being addressed now. Are we clear? Mm-hmm. Back to the reversionary statement. Now you understand the reversionary statement? In all that you do with them, no matter what the correspondence, that nature of that thought must be in your head. Go ahead, brother.
Will the international banking cartel, will they be brought up on charges or something like that by the United States?
The reason they have those certain things have not taken place, and I'm going to repeat again, is when you don't understand it, or it hasn't dawned on you what we've been talking about. The U.S. democracy platform was created to maintain the fraud. The whole platform is corrupt. It's not a banker over here that's corrupt, and then a banker over there that's corrupt, and then Congressman Bosnato Dingle didn't know about it, that you have to call him. They're all networked part of the fraud, which is why no one's going. Why do you think the Manchurians have put out them 6.5 million assassins? Because that's how you bring them to the negotiation table. Because they keep jumping out of planes and, oh, I forgot my parachute again. Damn. They're supposed to be building the house with nail guns and mist up there and they shoot themselves 8 times over here or whatever. Suicide. And they hang themselves from tall garages with cathedral ceilings with no chairs under them. Suicide. Then they have dinner at Chase Manhattan building in New York and stuff. And they're looking over the balcony. It says, this is beautiful sky. Oh, that slipped. And about 34 or to 50 of them that they admit to, then everybody starts negotiating. And they say, well, you still got toys, so you take one, we'll take 10, see who lasts. So that's what's going on in world politics now, and our people are still asleep, not understanding that the center of this, because they trying to be black. Don't know they're going to be made black. Black actually means ashes. Just like some other people that was claiming to be somebody that you're not, and taking up space in dishonor. As a matter of fact, King Alfred is actually based on that operation. For some other people that's claiming to be somebody that they're not. That same technology that they learned from that is being used and going to be used against some other people that's making them same violations to this day that are maintaining this honor, but they want the cookies. This is tight.
You talked about Pepsi pull up.
Oh yeah. Take a look at this anyway while we talk. Get back to him, keep that.
I got better about that. That's what we do.
Because it's really what it is, you know. And if there's any lessons that people can learn from the Bible, from Jesus, is the works that he did to liberate people. That work that he did. Now you already know his name is Yahushua. And then Prophet Muhammad came to complete the cycles or the works of Yahshua. They were liberators. They weren't going around teaching spookism. They were liberators. They were social reformers. And the problem with people is instead of listening to them, they start worshiping them rather than paying attention to their instructions. And it fell right back into the hands of the Romans. That's basically what's happened to us. Over and over again. And when the prophets came, they always told people, listen to my words. Listen, don't get caught up in worshiping me. I don't know. Only the Father knows. I only came to show you the way. Stop this stuff. All of you are gods. They were telling them over and over again. They start worshiping the prophets, and then the Romans murder them. Then they want to talk about how great they are. And this has been the dead culture that we've been living for generations. Well, the deal of it is for your liberation, that mentality, that anthropomorphic mentality must be exposed, and you must grow up and put your childish things away and get down with the real world and get unplugged from that false matrix that we've been plugged into for all these times. You know, and so this is the knowledge of the global world trust. Now look at this. Now this is also United States Code of Law, Title 8 corporations. That's the banking power denied. You see? See, so no corporation organized under this chapter shall possess the power of issuing bills, notes, or other evidences of debt for circulation as money, or the power of carrying on the business of receiving deposits of money. Now, already you see that these people that are operating these banks are in violation of law. Are we clear? So, as you can see, the U.S. democracy platform was set forth to negate law. It's not set forth to support law. It's set forth and constructed to negate the law and thus rob you of your estates. Are we clear? Now, for further supports, let's go into, say, Traficant's speech. And then you can see they murdered him. As you all know, they murdered Traficant about a year and a half ago. What's it, 2 years now?
Yeah.
About 2 years now?
Maybe 3, going on 3.
Yeah.
2014. I think it's 2014.
State representative.
Say it again?
Somebody was asking, who was it?
Oh, James Travicant? Well, you'll see it in a minute. So, read with this, you all. This is James Travicant's speech on the floor of the House of Representatives. And we're not going to, maybe we should go through the whole thing.
Yes, sir.
But, all right. But this will give you an understanding of someone who understands this. But this is common knowledge. This is congressional records. But you should just know this anyway. But the foundation upon which this is based is actually on Louis McFadden, who wanted to bring charges on them in 32 and 34. They poisoned him when he went to visit his daughter in New York. All right? And so, I mean, this is stuff that you're not going to get in your regular news. So I'm just informing you so that you can do research. But now we're going to read this correspondence to the House. So keep in mind, all of your politicians already know this. That means all your senators, all your congressmen, all your council people, all your mayors, all your governors, they already know this stuff. But you know they don't discuss this stuff with our people. Now keep in mind, while they're talking to you, talking about votes and everything, they already know that your vote don't count. It's just that you didn't know your vote don't count. And that's just keeping the sheeple, like Dr. Naila says on here, keeping the sheeple, keeping the sheeple busy. Keeping the sheeple busy while they rape you. Well, she's such a good artist.
Yeah. So creative.
Anyway, so this is on the floor, House Joint Resolution 192. Now this is referenced, now let's do a sequence so you'll understand. Now keep in mind when Noble Ali set up the Old Canaanite Temple in 1913, it collapsed that United States corporation that was set up by the demon representatives after the coup d'etat of 61. So that United States corporation shell, they registered that one in Puerto Rico and then backed it on the backs of the descendants of the Moors tagged as African Americans. And all the UST bonds that back their debt since the Civil War has been on your back. That's the basis of your poverty, your broken families. No matter how you work hard, how they're stealing your land all over the place that never gets heritable to your children, etc. And then the people have to run all different parts of the United States just to try to survive, to get a job or something, and not even knowing they're on their own land, under occupation. All right, now, so that United States lasted until about 1928. Noble Ali in 1928 registered, in 25 he registered the Old Canaanite Temple under the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Moorish Temple of Science, as a civic organization. And with the support and backup of, they are in law non-descendable. No matter how old they are, they will simply be declared a minority instead of a minor. And then their leaders are told to tell them that means Afrocentricity, when it actually means political condition. Because they know they can't read anyway. You deal with most of these so-called black leaders, and they'll present minority like it's Afrocentricity. No, it really is social status. That's why they won't, give our people law and history together when they know it goes together. And then they put out these semantic terms and our people think they mean one thing and they actually mean another. Absolutely not what they think it means. And then when they confess it, they are what? Not descendable. And so it's important for those who promote these things not to teach these things. And why? Because knowing what you know so far already does what? The fiat operations of the Kabbalah of 1861 depends on your blind faith. And once the blinders are pulled off your eyes, the faith dies, and the bond therefore dies. And it has no power whatsoever except what you give it. This is codified basically where Yeshua says Satan has no power except what you give him. Well, he has all the power. He's taking all my peanut butter sandwiches. You know, and Jesus said, come on, y'all, stop. They don't have no power except what you give them. Get up, Lazarus, get up from the rich man's feet. Why? Because you have the world's largest estate. You just been misled. You want to follow after them Romans? There you go. Now you got it. You buying and selling with the mark and the number of the Roman names. Now you don't own nothing. Now you want to march, pray, and complain. Well, you can just suggest you don't hold your breath. Honor your mothers and fathers like you should have done the first time you've been married. It converts right into actually real politics. It's just that people don't understand the books because they're not presented to them in their Kabbalistic base. They're given to them in the anthropomorphic base for children. So they're looking at figures. They're going around worshiping and doing like this. The stuff don't work. And they just pass it to the next generation and have them die out. Go ahead.
I get that we are being deceived, and I get
We've been deceived and are being deceived.
Right, but what I'm trying to find out is exactly how they benefit from.
This is how they benefit. They got all your cookies. If somebody, it's like this. If somebody, you got to understand colonial operations. Sheeple. Sheeple magazine. That's right.
I mean, it's a payoff. It's a payoff for them.
Marcus Mosiah Garvey, they were teaching government structure, etc. Juali was already teaching nationality, so now they're correcting the heirship status of the people and their consciousness so that they can learn those things necessary to be better citizens, which is the highest level of civics. And they also set up a trust to protect their property. So, 1929, they assassinated him.
One thing.
Right?
One thing.
But the United States Corporation Company collapsed anyway. Here.
Jekyll Island, that was 1910.
Yeah, that was 1910 to 1913.
Right.
In other words, see, when Drew Ali established the old Canaanite temple, the operations, that's the official establishment. The operations were going on since 09.
All right.
Do you understand? Just like, for instance, if you're doing business here and then you do a grand opening, you've already been in business. You know, he had already been to Mecca and around. And sea merchant, he traveling the seas, that was already established. This is a countermeasure. So officially, the old Canaanite temple officially was established, 1913. And so that's when he set up the Federal Reserve and the Inquisition operations for the exchequer. So between 13 and 16, that's when they set up the exchequer's chamber, you know, for the church, and that's called the Internal Revenue Services. All right? So that's really the Inquisition Revenue Services. So what occurred was that United States corporation that they set up in Puerto Rico collapsed because the heirs are speaking up. Now that lasted until 28. Juali set up the civic organization in 25 and really strongly started teaching government then. They infiltrated. Woodrow Wilson, no, that's Calvin Coolidge and J. Edgar Hoover. Infiltrated, they set up the COINTELPRO operations, etc. When they actually, by law, they're supposed to back them and help them and support them. The same thing that they were supposed to do with the Freedmen's Bureau in 65.
Right.
Do you understand? So it was a countermeasure again. So they got rid of Noble Drawley in 1929. They infiltrated. 1928, he adopted a religious affidavit and also under Heard's law, so ecclesiastic law, to also preserve the people's estate because people were coming in to the temple from church, mosque, synagogue, different walks of life, had no idea what this man was doing, but they knew something about him was right. And so millions were coming on board. They got rid of him, but the United States Corporation Company collapsed anyway. So June the 5th, 1933, they did what is called the fake bank holiday and created another United States Corporation Company registered in France and continued to do the bonds on the descendants of the Moors, and that's really what this is all about. Are we clear? All right, so let's read. James Tropcon on the House Joint Resolution 192. United States Congressional Record, March the 17th, 1993. This is when he made the speech. All right, so for those researchers, volume 33, page H, 13, and they must be provable heirs. It is not just knowing this, you must be provable heirs. That's why Noble Drawley said if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality, because it's an heirship issue. If you get caught up in thinking it's money, your concept is wrong. It's an heirship issue. They want you to think it's a money issue. Although money is involved, that's peripheral. That's just peripheral. It's sort of like somebody, it's like somebody owns the farm in Wheatfield talking about, did we get the rye bread slices for the peanut butter sandwiches? Did we get the wheat bread? You know, no, it's really, that's not an exaggeration. When you get a little bit of this, they gotta divert you because it's bigger than you'll ever know. And more people know this than you'll ever know. This is why no one goes to jail. Because the United States Corporation Company, the U.S. democracy, is a political platform that was constructed specifically to hide this information. It's not a country. It's a political platform of impostorship. That's why they must take death oaths of secrecy. That's why nobody goes to jail. This is the reason why, in order to even begin to put brakes on this a little bit, why the Manchurians had to step in. Because it wasn't going to happen otherwise. Was not going to happen otherwise. As a matter of fact, even why negotiations are taking place right now while it's being dismantled. And so to neutralize them, they can't control them printing or what they call quantitative easing and derivatives. That's really another word for them maintaining the fraud on a network basis. It's not some individual in this department that's corrupt and an individual in that department that might be corrupt, that might have some power. The platform was designed to hide this history. The platform was designed for impostorship. So the coup d'etat of 1861 is the creation of the U.S. platform for the demons. It's called U.S. democracy. Distinguished from the United States Republic, which is the organic, legitimate political platform set up between the Muslims and the Christians as a beacon light for proper government on Earth planet and a sample or example to the rest of the civilized world. It was overthrown in 1861. Great Masonic secret. And you are the target. Do you understand? And so if the legal guys can get you start talking about colors and racism, your concept is totally wrong because it's not what's going on. And that's what their payoff is, to keep you arguing spurious, which makes you incompetent and gives them mandate. As long as the heirs are incompetent, think always, don't get emotionally involved. Think estate principle. As long as the heir of an estate demonstrates incompetence,